In the shadowed halls of Whitehaven Manor, a scream pierces the night, and a loyal butler lies dead, clutching a cryptic note. Beware the one who knows. What secret does the ancient Codex Aureus hide, its cipher whispering of a scandal that could ruin a family? Why did Hercule Poirot, the meticulous Belgian detective, arrive unbidden, summoned by a letter no one claims to have sent? As suspicion falls on a circle of guests, each with motives cloaked in lies, Poirot's little grey cells unravel a web of betrayal, murder, and a shameful past. Will the truth destroy the Pennington legacy, or redeem it? Step into a mystery where every clue counts, and no secret stays buried. Chapter 1. The Enigmatic Invitation. In the waning days of autumn, when the leaves of Berkshire turned to hues of amber and crimson, Captain Arthur Hastings found himself seated in the cozy drawing room of Whitehaven Manor, the ancestral home of the illustrious Pennington family. The air was heavy with the scent of polished oak and beeswax, and the fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows across the walls adorned with portraits of stern-faced forebears. Hastings, ever the genial companion, had accepted an invitation to this remote estate at the behest of his old friend, Sir Reginald Pennington, a man of scholarly repute and quiet disposition. The invitation had been cryptic, hinting at a matter of utmost delicacy, requiring the presence of a trusted confidant. Yet, as Hastings sipped his tea, he sensed an undercurrent of unease beneath the manor's polished civility. The drawing room was a study in restrained opulence. A grand chandelier hung above, its crystals catching the firelight, while a mahogany table bore a silver tray of delicate sandwiches and scones. The guests, a small but varied assembly, conversed in low tones, their voices mingling with the ticking of an ormolu clock on the mantel. Sir Reginald, a wiry man with silver hair and a perpetually furrowed brow, sat at the head of the room, his fingers drumming lightly on the arm of his chair. Beside him was his niece, Miss Eleanor Pennington, a young woman of striking beauty, her dark eyes betraying a restless intelligence. Across from her sat Dr. Mortimer Blackwood, a local physician with a penchant for nervous gestures, handkerchief as she glanced toward the heavy oak door leading to the library. "It is a fine evening, is it not, Captain Hastings?" remarked Mrs. Blackwood, her voice cutting through the murmur like a knife through silk. "Though I confess, I find these old estates rather oppressive. So much history, and not all of it pleasant." Hastings smiled politely. "Indeed, madam, but there is a certain charm in their stories. Sir Reginald has promised us something extraordinary tonight, has he not?" Sir Reginald stirred, his eyes flickering with a mix of pride and unease. "Quite so, Captain. I have invited you all here for a purpose beyond mere hospitality. Tonight, I intend to unveil a discovery that will rewrite the annals of literary history. But I must ask for your patience, for the matter is delicate." Before he could elaborate, the door to the drawing room swung open, admitting a butler of impeccable decorum. "Pardon the interruption, Sir Reginald," he said, bowing slightly, "but a gentleman has arrived. He insists on speaking with you at once." Sir Reginald's brow furrowed further. "A gentleman? At this hour? I was not expecting—" "His name, sir, is Monsieur Hercule Poirot." A murmur rippled through the room, and Hastings' heart leapt. Poirot. The name alone conjured memories of brilliance, of mysteries unraveled with surgical precision. He had not seen his friend in months, yet the mere mention of the diminutive Belgian detective set his pulse racing. Poirot's presence could mean only one thing. Something extraordinary was afoot. "Show him in, Jenkins," said Sir Reginald, his voice tinged with curiosity and a hint of apprehension. Moments later, Hercule Poirot entered, his small, fastidious figure a stark contrast to the grandeur of the room. His patent leather shoes gleamed, his moustache was impeccably waxed, and his green eyes sparkled with an intelligence that seemed to pierce the very souls of those present. He carried a silver-topped cane, which he leaned upon lightly, and his bow was as precise as a metronome. "Bonsoir, mes amis," Poirot said, his voice smooth and accented. "I apologize for my unannounced arrival, but I received a most urgent summons from Sir Reginald Pennington. A matter, I believe, of a manuscript." Sir Reginald rose, said nothing, while Travers adjusted his spectacles with a nervous cough. Miss Langley, however, met Poirot's gaze with a steadiness that Hastings found intriguing. "Forgive me, Monsieur Poirot," said Sir Reginald, recovering his composure, "but this is most irregular. I assure you I sent no such letter. However, since you are here, and given your reputation, perhaps you might join us. I was about to reveal the discovery I mentioned." Poirot inclined his head. "I am at your service, Sir Reginald. Pray tell me of this manuscript." Sir Reginald hesitated, then gestured toward the library door. "It is best shown, not told. If you will all follow me." The party rose, their movements stiff with anticipation, and followed Sir Reginald into the library. The room was a bibliophile's dream, its walls lined with leather-bound tomes, their spines glinting in the light of a dozen candelabra. At the center stood a pedestal, upon which rested a glass case containing a single manuscript, its pages yellowed and brittle. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and secrets. "This," said Sir Reginald, his voice trembling with reverence, "is the Codex Aureus, a manuscript penned by an unknown author in the 16th century. It was discovered in a hidden compartment in this very library, and its contents, well, they are extraordinary. It is written in a cipher, one that has defied all attempts at decryption. But its value lies not only in its age, but in what it may conceal, secrets that could shake the foundations of history." Poirot approached the pedestal, his eyes gleaming as he studied the manuscript. "A cipher, you say? And yet, Sir Reginald, you have not mentioned why it requires such secrecy, or why it has drawn me here." Sir Reginald opened his mouth to reply, but before he could speak, a scream shattered the silence. It came from the drawing room, high and piercing, followed by a thud that seemed to shake the very walls. The guests froze, their faces pale, and Hastings felt a chill run down his spine. "Stay here," Sir Reginald barked, but Poirot was already moving, his cane tapping briskly as he led the way back to the drawing room. Hastings followed, his heart pounding, and the others trailed behind, their footsteps echoing in the cavernous hall. They burst into the drawing room to find Mrs. Blackwood standing over a crumpled figure on the floor. It was Jenkins. Silence. "Mes amis," he said, his voice calm but commanding. "A crime has been committed, and Hercule Poirot is now among you. I assure you the truth will not remain hidden for long." As the firelight flickered and the shadows deepened, Hastings knew that the quiet evening at Whitehaven Manor had ended, and a mystery far darker than any manuscript had begun. The drawing room of Whitehaven Manor, so recently a haven of polite conversation, now bore the chill of death. The body of Jenkins, the butler, lay sprawled upon the Persian rug, his lifeless eyes fixed upon some unseen point beyond the chandelier. The trickle of blood from his temple had begun to pool, staining the intricate patterns of the carpet. The crumpled paper, clutched in his stiffening fingers until Poirot had gently extracted it, now rested in the detective's gloved hand, its cryptic symbols a silent taunt to the assembled company. Captain Hastings, standing near the hearth, felt the weight of the moment settle upon him like a fog, his soldier's instincts warring with the unease of the unknown. Hercule Poirot, ever the calm center of the storm, rose from his examination of the body, his small frame radiating authority. His green eyes swept the room, taking in the shocked faces of the guests, each frozen in a tableau of dismay. Sir Reginald Pennington stood nearest the door, his scholarly composure shattered, his hands trembling as he clutched the back of a chair. Miss Eleanor Pennington, her face pale as moonlight, gripped her handkerchief so tightly that her knuckles gleamed white. Dr. Mortimer Blackwood knelt beside the body, his physician's instincts overriding his shock as he confirmed what was already evident. Jenkins was beyond help. Mrs. Clara Blackwood, her sharp features drawn tight, hovered near her husband, her eyes darting from face to face as if seeking the culprit among them. Mr. Julian Travers, the solicitor, adjusted his spectacles repeatedly, a nervous tic that betrayed his disquiet, while Miss Beatrice Langley, the governess, stood apart, her expression unreadable but her posture rigid with tension. "Monsieur Poirot," Sir Reginald said, his voice hoarse, "this is monstrous. Jenkins has been with our family for 20 years. Who could have done such a thing?" Poirot raised a hand, his gesture as precise as a conductor's.
Have been instantaneous, or nearly so. Poirot nodded, his eyes drifting to the room's furnishings. A heavy brass candlestick stood on a nearby table, its base gleaming in the firelight. He approached it, his movements deliberate, and examined it without touching. No blood, he murmured, almost to himself. Curieux. And the time of death, doctor? No more than 10 minutes ago, Blackwood replied. The body is still warm, and rigor has not yet set in. Hastings, ever attentive to Poirot's methods, glanced at the ormolu clock on the mantel. It read 8:47 p.m. The scream had pierced the air at precisely 8:40, meaning Jenkins had been struck down moments after the party had left the drawing room for the library. The timing was impossibly tight, and Hastings felt a prickle of unease. Poirot, he ventured. We were all in the library when it happened. How could anyone have slipped away unnoticed? Poirot's moustache twitched, a sign of his mind at work. A question most pertinent, mon ami. But first, let us examine the paper. He unfolded the crumpled note once more, holding it to the light. The cryptic symbols, a series of dashes, dots, and curious glyphs, were incomprehensible to Hastings, but Poirot's eyes gleamed with fascination. Below the cipher, the words "Beware the one who knows" were scrawled in a hurried hand, the ink smudged as if written in haste. This cipher, Poirot said, addressing the room, is no mere decoration. It is a message, and it is connected to the Codex Aureus. Jenkins, I suspect, knew something of its significance, or of the danger it represents. Mrs. Blackwood's voice cut through the silence, sharp and accusatory. Are you suggesting, Monsieur Poirot, that one of us is responsible? We were all together in the library when poor Jenkins was struck down. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Madame, the truth does not always align with appearances. Let us establish the facts. Who among you left a drawing room before the scream was heard? A chorus of denials followed, each guest insisting they had remained with the group. Eleanor's voice trembled as she spoke. I was by the pedestal, looking at the manuscript. I didn't even glance at the door. Nor I, added Travers, his tone in dip. Doors were locked, the windows secure, and the grounds are patrolled by your gamekeeper, are they not? No, the answer lies within these walls. He paused, his eyes narrowing. Tell me, who among you knew Jenkins best? The question hung in the air, and it was Miss Langley who answered, her voice barely above a whisper. Jenkins was kind. He spoke to me often, about the manor, about the family. He mentioned the Codex once in passing, but said it was dangerous knowledge. I thought he was joking. Poirot's eyebrows rose. Dangerous knowledge, you say? And did he elaborate? No, she replied, her eyes dropping to the floor. He changed the subject quickly, as if he regretted saying it. Hastings watched Poirot's face, recognizing the spark of interest in his friend's expression. The detective turned to Sir Reginald. This Codex Aureus, who else knew of its discovery? Only those present, Sir Reginald said. And Jenkins, of course. I confided in him when the manuscript was found, as he was responsible for the library's upkeep. I trusted him implicitly. Perhaps, Poirot murmured, too implicitly. The room fell silent, the weight of suspicion settling over the guests like a shroud. Poirot knelt once more beside the body, his gloved fingers tracing the air above Jenkins' wound. The blow was precise, he said, almost to himself. No hesitation, no struggle. The killer knew exactly where to strike. Dr. Blackwood, his voice unsteady, said, But the weapon, Monsieur Poirot, what of it? There's nothing here that fits the description. Poirot rose, his eyes scanning the room. The weapon, Doctor, is closer than you think. But for now, let us secure the scene. Captain Hastings, please ensure that no one touches anything. Sir Reginald, I require a room where I may conduct interviews. The truth, it hides in the details, and Hercule Poirot will uncover it. As the guests dispersed, their faces a mixture of fear and suspicion, Hastings followed Poirot's instructions, his mind racing. The cipher, the manuscript, the cryptic warning, all pointed to a mystery deeper than a simple murder. And yet, Poirot's calm demeanor reassured him. The Belgian detective, with his meticulous habits and unerring logic, would unravel this knot, no matter how tangled it seemed. As the clock struck 9, the fire's glow dim, thicken with suspicion, as the reality of Jenkins' murder settled over its inhabitants. The drawing room, now a grim tableau of death, was sealed off at Poirot's insistence, with Captain Hastings stationed at the door to ensure no one disturbed the scene. The guests, their nerves frayed, had retreated to the morning room, a smaller chamber adorned with floral wallpaper and a view of the frost-kissed gardens. Hercule Poirot, however, remained in the library, his small, immaculate figure dwarfed by the towering bookshelves, yet commanding the space with an air of quiet authority. His green eyes, sharp as cut emeralds, lingered on the Codex Aureus, still resting beneath its glass case, its cryptic pages whispering secrets that had now claimed a life. Hastings, ever the loyal companion, rejoined Poirot after ensuring the drawing room was secure. He found the detective standing before the manuscript, his silver-topped cane tapping lightly against the floor, a rhythm that betrayed the furious workings of his mind. "Poirot," Hastings ventured, "you arrived so suddenly tonight. That letter you mentioned, how could it have come from Sir Reginald if he denies sending it?" Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile playing at the corners of his lips. "Mon ami, the letter is a puzzle in itself. It was written on fine vellum, bearing the Pennington crest, and delivered to my flat in London by a courier who vanished into the fog. The message spoke of the Codex, of a cipher that conceals a truth most dangerous, and it begged my presence to prevent a tragedy. Yet Sir Reginald claims ignorance. This, Hastings, is no coincidence. Someone wished Hercule Poirot to be here, and I intend to discover why." "But who?" Hastings pressed, glancing toward the morning room, where the guests' muffled voices could be heard. "One of them, or someone else entirely?" Poirot raised a finger, his expression enigmatic. "Patience, Hastings. The truth, it reveals itself in layers, like the pages of that manuscript. Let us begin with the facts. Jenkins is dead, struck down with precision. The cipher in his hand matches the style of the Codex Aureus, and someone, perhaps, feared what he knew. We must now learn the movements of each guest, their secrets." Her lips pursed as if guarding 1,000 unspoken thoughts. Mr. Julian Travers, the solicitor, scribbled notes in a small leather-bound book, his spectacles glinting, and Miss Beatrice Langley, the governess, occupied a corner chair, her gaze steady but impenetrable. Poirot entered with a bow, his presence commanding immediate attention. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice smooth as polished glass. "A crime has been committed under this roof, and it is my duty, nay, my calling, to uncover the truth. Jenkins, a man known to you all, was murdered not an hour ago. I require your cooperation, your candor, and above all, your precision. Let us begin with the moments before the scream. Where were you, and what did you see?" A heavy silence followed, broken only by the crackle of the fire. Sir Reginald cleared his throat. "I was in the library, as you know, Monsieur Poirot. I was explaining the significance of the Codex to Mr. Travers when we heard the scream." Travers nodded vigorously. "Quite so. I was standing near the pedestal, examining the manuscript's binding. Fascinating work, though I confess I'm no expert in ciphers. I didn't notice anyone leave the room." Poirot's eyes flicked to Eleanor, who shifted uncomfortably. "And you, Mademoiselle Pennington?" "I was near the bookshelves," she said, her voice soft but steady. "I was looking at the Codex from a distance. I didn't see anything unusual, and I certainly didn't leave the library." Dr. Blackwood stopped pacing, his hands clasped behind his back. "I was with my wife near the window. We were discussing the manuscript's historical context. I heard nothing until the scream." Mrs. Blackwood's eyes narrowed. "As my husband says, we were together, and I saw no one slip away. Surely, Monsieur Poirot, this must be the work of an outsider, a thief perhaps, after the Codex." Poirot's smile was polite but unyielding. Madame, the manor is secure, and the grounds are watched. An outsider would require remarkable skill to enter, strike, and vanish in mere minutes. No, the answer lies among us. He turned to Miss Langley, who had remained silent. And you, mademoiselle, your position by the window, did you observe anything without being seen? The corridor between the rooms is short, and we were all together. Poirot's eyes gleamed. A question most excellent, Hastings. The corridor, it is narrow, yes, but it has doors. Doors to other rooms, perhaps, or to the servants' passages. We must map the manor's arteries, for the killer moved through them like a shadow. Sir Reginald, his voice strained, interjected. Monsieur Poirot, I have the plans of the manor in my study. They show every passage, every door. Would that help? Immensely, Poirot replied. And I shall require a list of all who were in the manor tonight. Guests, servants, anyone who might have had access to the drawing room. As Sir Reginald nodded and left to retrieve the plans, Poirot turned to the group, his gaze piercing. One of you knows more than you say. The cipher, the codex, the warning in Jenkins' hand. These are not random. Someone in this room has a secret, and Hercule Poirot will find it. The guests exchanged uneasy glances, their silence louder than words. Mrs. Blackwood's lips twitched, as if suppressing a retort, while Travers' pen scratched furiously in his notebook. Eleanor's eyes darted to the floor, and Dr. Blackwood resumed his pacing. Miss Langley, however, remained still, her expression a mask of quiet resolve. Poirot motioned to Hastings. Mon ami, accompany Sir Reginald. Ensure the plans are complete, and note any peculiarities. I shall remain here to observe. As Hastings followed Sir Reginald, he felt the weight of Poirot's words. The detective's arrival, so sudden and unexplained, was no accident. The letter, the cipher, the murder, all were threads in a tapestry Poirot was determined to unravel. The manor, with its creaking floors and shadowed corners, seemed to hold its breath, as if aware that the Belgian detective's little grey cells were already at work, piecing together the puzzle of Jenkins' death. In the morning room, Poirot stood alone, his eyes fixed on the fire. The game has begun, he murmured, and the one who knows is closer than they think. Chapter 4. The questions begin. The morning room at Whitehaven Manor, though bright with its floral wallpaper and wide windows, felt stifling as Hercule Poirot began his interviews. The guests wait in the adjacent parlour. The morning room, now empty save for Poirot, Hastings and the first interviewee, felt like a stage set for a duel of wits. Poirot had chosen to begin with Miss Eleanor Pennington, whose delicate features and restless demeanour had not escaped his notice. She sat across from him, her silk handkerchief now a crumpled relic in her lap, her dark eyes meeting his with a mixture of defiance and apprehension. Mademoiselle Pennington, Poirot began, his voice smooth and measured. You are the niece of Sir Reginald, oui? A young lady of refinement, yet I sense in you a certain agitation. Tell me, what is your connection to this Codex Aureus, and what did you know of Jenkins' role in its discovery? Eleanor's fingers tightened around the handkerchief. I knew of the Codex only what Uncle Reginald told me, she said, her voice soft but steady. He found it 3 weeks ago, hidden in a false panel behind the library shelves. He was thrilled, said it could be the find of the century. Jenkins helped him retrieve it. He was always in the library, cataloguing books, dusting shelves. I thought nothing of it until tonight. Poirot leaned forward, his moustache twitching slightly. And Jenkins, did he ever speak to you of the manuscript, of its cipher perhaps, or of any danger it might pose? Eleanor hesitated, her eyes flickering to the window. He mentioned it once, in passing. He said the Codex was more than it seemed, but he wouldn't elaborate. I thought he was being cryptic, as he sometimes was. He was loyal to Uncle Reginald, always discreet. Discreet, Poirot repeated, his tone thoughtful, yet not so discreet as to avoid a murderer's blow. Tell me, mademoiselle, where were you precisely at 8:40, when the scream was heard? I was in the library, as I said, Eleanor replied, her voice firm. near the bookshelves, looking at the codex from a distance. I didn't leave the room, and I saw no one else do so. Poirot nodded, his fingers drumming lightly on the arm of his chair. Bon. And the note in Jenkins' hand, the cipher with the words, "Beware the one who knows." Does it mean anything to you? Eleanor's face paled, but she shook her head. No. Confirmed he was in the library with his wife, discussing the manuscript's historical significance. Jenkins was a quiet man, he said, but efficient. He never spoke of the codex to me, though I saw him handling it once, when Sir Reginald first showed it to us. He seemed cautious, almost reverent. And the blow to Jenkins's head, Poirot said, his eyes narrowing. You confirmed it was a single forceful strike. Could it have been delivered by anyone in this house? Blackwood shifted uncomfortably. Physically, yes. It required strength, but not exceptional strength. A candlestick, a paperweight, anything heavy could have done it. But I can't imagine who would. I mean, we were all together. Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. And yet, Doctor, someone was not. Merci, you may go. Mrs. Clara Blackwood followed, her sharp tongue tempered by a wariness that Poirot noted at once. She corroborated her husband's account, insisting they were together in the library, but her eyes darted to the map on the table when Poirot mentioned the manor's passages. I know nothing of ciphers or manuscripts, she said curtly. Jenkins was a servant, nothing more. If he was killed over that book, it's Sir Reginald's obsession that brought this upon us. Poirot's eyebrows rose. An obsession, madame? You disapprove of Sir Reginald's pursuit of the codex? It's brought nothing but trouble, she snapped, then caught herself. I mean, it's a distraction. He's been consumed by it for weeks, neglecting everything else. Poirot dismissed her with a nod, turning to Hastings as she left. The lady protests too much, no? There is a bitterness there, a resentment. We must watch her closely. Mr. Julian Travers, the solicitor, was next, his verbosity undimmed by the evening's events. He spoke at length of the codex's potential value, both scholarly and financial, but claimed ignorance of its cipher or Jenkins's role. I was in the library, discussing the manuscript with Sir Reginald, he said, adjusting his spectacles. I saw nothing, heard nothing until the scream. Finally, Miss Beatrice Langley entered, her quiet demeanour a stark contrast to the other's agitation. Poirot's questions were gentle but incisive, probing her observations from the library window. You saw nothing in the garden, ma'am? Examine it. Hastings nodded, his mind racing. But Poirot, the timing. Less than 10 minutes between our leaving the drawing room and the scream. Could someone have slipped away, used the passage and returned? It is possible, Poirot said, his voice low. The killer is clever, Hastings, and bold. But they have left traces in words, in glances, in the very air of this house. The cipher, the codex, the warning, they are pieces of a puzzle, and Hercule Poirot will fit them together. As the clock struck 10, the manor seemed to hold its breath, its shadows deepening with each passing moment. Hastings glanced at Poirot, who stood motionless, his eyes fixed on the map. What next, Poirot? He asked. Poirot's smile was grim. We search, mon ami. The servants' passage, the drawing room, the codex itself. Every detail matters, and the truth, it hides in the smallest of them. The morning room, now a crucible of suspicion, seemed to pulse with the unspoken fears of Whitehaven Manor's guests. Hercule Poirot, his small frame radiating an almost tangible intensity, had concluded his initial interviews, each word and gesture meticulously catalogued in the vast ledger of his mind. Captain Hastings, standing by the rosewood table where the manor's plans lay spread, felt the weight of the mystery pressing upon him. The murder of Jenkins, the cryptic note, and the enigmatic Codex Aureus formed a tangled web, and Poirot's calm determination was the only anchor in the storm of uncertainty. As the clock chimed 10:30, Poirot announced his intention to examine the servants' passage, the hidden artery of the manor that might hold the key to the killer's movements. But before he could proceed, a commotion erupted from the parlor where the guests waited. Raised voices, sharp and accusatory, pierced the quiet,
and Hastings exchanged a glance with Poirot, who raised an eyebrow in mild amusement. "It seems, mon ami," Poirot said, "that the human heart cannot remain silent for long. Let us see what stirs the waters." They entered the parlor to find Mrs. Clara Blackwood standing, her face flushed with indignation, pointing a trembling finger at Mr. Julian Travers. The solicitor, his spectacles askew, looked both affronted and defensive, his notebook clutched like a shield.
Turned sharply. "I asked for no such thing, Travers. You expressed interest in the codex, yes, but I never commissioned you to document it." The room fell silent, the weight of Sir Reginald's words settling like dust. Travers' mouth opened, then closed, his hands fumbling with his notebook. I misunderstood, perhaps," he stammered. "I thought you wished me to assess its worth." Poirot's eyes gleamed as he stepped forward, his cane tapping lightly on the parquet floor. "Monsieur Travers, a misunderstanding, you say? Yet your notes, they are most detailed, no? Perhaps you will permit Hercule Poirot to examine them." Travers hesitated, then handed over the notebook with a reluctant nod. Poirot flipped through its pages, his expression unreadable. The notes were a jumble of legal jargon, sketches of the codex's binding, and cryptic abbreviations that seemed to hint at valuations and potential buyers. One page, however, caught Poirot's eye, a crude sketch of the cipher found in Jenkins's hand, accompanied by a single word: key. "Curieux," Poirot murmured, closing the notebook. "Monsieur Travers, you have a keen eye for detail, yet you claimed ignorance of the cipher. Why then this sketch?" Travers adjusted his spectacles, his voice unsteady. I was merely intrigued by the symbols on the codex. I copied them to study later. It means nothing, I assure you." Mrs. Blackwood scoffed. "Nothing? You expect us to believe that when Jenkins lies dead with a cipher in his hand? You're hiding something, Mr. Travers." Poirot raised a hand, his voice calm but commanding. "Madame, accusations without evidence are but noise. Let us not leap to conclusions. Monsieur Travers, you may keep your notebook, for now. But I advise you to be truthful, for the little grey cells of Hercule Poirot are not easily deceived." As Travers retreated, his face pale, Poirot turned to the group. "Mesdames et messieurs, the death of Jenkins has stirred suspicion among you, and that is well, for it means the killer is not at ease. But we must not be distracted by the obvious. The truth, it hides in the shadows, not in the spotlight." Hastings, watching the exchange, felt a familiar thrill. Poirot was setting the stage, letting the guests' nerves light casting eerie shadows. The passage connected the library to the drawing room via a series of sharp turns, with smaller branches leading to the kitchens and servants' quarters. At one junction, Poirot paused, kneeling to examine the floor. "Regardez, Hastings," he said, pointing to a faint scuff mark in the dust. "A shoe, perhaps, or the edge of a garment. Someone passed here recently, and with haste." Hastings peered closer, his heart quickening. "The killer?" "Perhaps," Poirot replied, his voice low. "But we must not assume. The mark is fresh, but it tells us only that someone used this passage. We need more, always more." They reached the drawing room's entrance, a hidden door disguised as a bookcase. Poirot pushed it open, revealing the grim scene of Jenkins' body, still untouched as per his instructions. He knelt beside the corpse, his gloved fingers tracing the air above the wound. "The blow was precise," he said, almost to himself. "No hesitation, no struggle. The killer knew Jenkins' habits, knew where he would be." Hastings glanced around, his eyes falling on the brass candlestick he had noticed earlier. "Poirot, what about the weapon? Could it be the candlestick?" Poirot rose, examining the candlestick without touching it. "It is possible, Hastings, but there is no blood, no trace of use. The killer was careful, or the weapon is elsewhere." He turned to the crumpled note, still resting on a nearby table where he had placed it. "This cipher, it is the heart of the matter. Jenkins died because of what he knew, or what someone feared he knew." As they returned to the morning room, Poirot's mind seemed to hum with activity. He summoned Sir Reginald,
who looked increasingly haggard. "Sir Reginald," Poirot said, "tell me of Jenkins' duties. Did he have access to the codex beyond its retrieval?" Sir Reginald nodded, his voice weary. "Jenkins was responsible for the library's upkeep. He handled the codex when I first found it, helped me clean it and place it in the case. He was unusually curious about it, now that I think of it. Asked questions about the cipher, though I dismissed them as idle chatter." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And did anyone else show such curiosity?" Sir Reginald hesitated. Travers echoing through the manor. The guests, still waiting in the parlor, were growing restless, their whispers a low hum of fear and suspicion. Poirot, however, seemed unperturbed, his mind a machine of logic and observation. "The net tightens, mon ami," he said softly. "The killer believes they have outwitted us, but Hercule Poirot is not so easily fooled. Tomorrow we shall search the codex itself, for in its pages, I suspect, lies the truth." Chapter 6. A Clue in Detail. The night at Whitehaven Manor had grown heavy with the weight of murder, its shadows lengthening as the clock ticked toward midnight. Hercule Poirot, undeterred by the hour or the mounting tension among the guests, had turned his attention to the Codex Aureus itself, convinced that the ancient manuscript held the key to Jenkins' death. Captain Hastings, ever at his side, followed Poirot back to the library, where the glass case gleamed under the soft glow of candelabra. The room, with its towering shelves and musty air, seemed to pulse with secrets, as if the very walls were whispering clues to the Belgian detective's keen mind. Poirot stood before the codex, his small hands clasped behind his back, his green eyes fixed on the yellowed pages visible through the glass. The manuscript, its leather cover cracked with age, bore rows of cryptic symbols, dots, dashes, and strange glyphs that defied immediate understanding. The note found in Jenkins's hand, now safely tucked in Poirot's pocket, echoed these symbols, a fact that had not escaped his notice. "Hastings," Poirot said, his voice low and deliberate, "the Codex Aureus is no mere relic. It is a puzzle, a labyrinth of meaning, and Jenkins's death is but a single thread in its design. We must examine it closely, for in its details lies the truth." Hastings, peering over Poirot's shoulder, felt a familiar mix of admiration and frustration. "But Poirot, it's all gibberish to me. How can you hope to decipher it without a key?" Poirot's moustache twitched, a sign of amusement. "Mon ami, the key is not always a physical thing. It is in the mind, in the patterns, in the contradictions. Observe the manuscript. Its symbols are not random, they follow a rhythm, a structure. And the note in Jenkins's hand, it is a..." Eyes gleamed as he leaned closer, his magnifying glass poised. "Bon oeil, Hastings. This smudge, it is not accidental. It is ink, fresh ink, not faded like the rest. Someone has touched this page recently, perhaps in haste." Sir Reginald, peering over Poirot's shoulder, frowned. "But that's impossible. The codex has been locked in the case since its discovery. Only Jenkins and I have handled it, and that was weeks ago." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Impossible, you say, yet the evidence does not lie. This smudge, it is a clue, a detail that betrays the hand of someone who sought to conceal or reveal something within these pages." He turned to another page, his fingers pausing over a sequence of symbols that matched those on Jenkins' note. "Regardez," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "These symbols here, they are identical to those in the warning. But see, there is a gap, a space where a single glyph is missing. The note in Jenkins' hand completes this sequence, as if it were torn from the codex itself." Hastings' mind raced. "You mean Jenkins wrote the note, or someone took a piece of the codex and gave it to him?" Poirot shook his head. "Not taken, Hastings. Copied. The codex is intact, but someone transcribed this sequence, perhaps to warn Jenkins, or to lure him to his death. The words, 'Beware the one who knows,' suggest a knowledge that was dangerous, a secret that could not be kept." Sir Reginald's face paled. But who would do such a thing? Jenkins was loyal, discreet. He knew nothing of the cipher's meaning, only that it was valuable.
Poirot's eyes narrowed. Did he, Sir Reginald? Or did he know more than he shared? We must return to the drawing room, to the scene of the crime. There, too, the details will speak. They left the library, the codex once more secured in its case, and returned to the drawing room, where Jenkins' body remained, a silent witness to the night's horrors. The room was as they had left it, the fire now reduced to embers, the brass candlestick still gleaming innocently on the table. Poirot moved with purpose, his cane tapping as he examined the floor, the furniture, the walls. Near the fireplace he paused, his magnifying glass hovering over a small, almost invisible mark on the hearthstone.
Must now consider the alibis, the motives, the secrets of those in this house. He turned to Sir Reginald, who stood by the door, his face a mask of anguish. Sir Reginald, tell me of the guests. Who among them has a connection to Jenkins beyond the superficial? Who might have feared his knowledge? Sir Reginald hesitated, his eyes darting to the floor. Jenkins was well-liked, but distant. He spoke little of his personal life. Eleanor, perhaps, knew him best. She spent much time in the library, and they often chatted. Travers, too, seemed curious about Jenkins' duties, asking questions about the manor's history. But I can't imagine why anyone would wish him harm. Poirot nodded, his mind clearly at work. And the codex? Has anyone else expressed interest in it, beyond those present tonight? Only Dr. Blackwood, Sir Reginald admitted. He's a local historian as well as a physician. He asked to study the codex last week, but I refused, as it was too delicate. He seemed disappointed, but he didn't press the matter. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Disappointment, you say? A most interesting emotion. Merci, Sir Reginald. You may return to the others. Hastings, we must now consider the psychology of this crime. The killer is clever, but they are human, and humans betray themselves in the smallest of details. As Sir Reginald left, Hastings leaned closer. Poirot, that smudge on the codex, it's a solid clue, isn't it? Someone tampered with it, and Jenkins paid the price. Poirot nodded, his expression grave. Oui, Hastings, the smudge is a whisper of guilt, a sign that someone in this house could not resist the lure of the codex. But we must be cautious. The killer expects us to chase the obvious, to suspect Travers perhaps, or Dr. Blackwood. We must look deeper, into the hearts of those who seem innocent. The clock struck midnight, its chimes echoing through the silent manor. The guests, waiting in the parlour, were no doubt growing restless, their suspicions festering like a wound. Poirot, however, seemed invigorated, his little grey cells humming with purpose. Tomorrow, he said softly, we shall gather them all, and the net will tighten. The clue in the codex, the scratch on the hearth, the chair out of place, these are the keys to the truth, and Hercule Poirot will incomplete. Poirot's green eyes gleamed in the lamplight as he studied the manor's map, his fingers tracing the servants' passage that connected the library to the drawing room. Hastings, he said, his voice low and precise. The killer is clever, but not infallible. The clues we have found, they are like breadcrumbs, leading us through the forest of deceit. But now we must probe deeper, into the motives that lurk beneath the surface. Secrets, mon ami, are the lifeblood of this crime. Before Hastings could respond, a soft knock interrupted them. Miss Beatrice Langley, the governess, stood at the door, her face pale but composed. Monsieur Poirot, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, I must speak with you, alone if you please. Poirot's eyebrows rose, but he nodded. Bien sûr, mademoiselle. Hastings, perhaps you will ensure the others remain in the parlour. Hastings hesitated, his curiosity piqued, but he complied, stepping into the corridor and closing the door behind him. Inside, Poirot gestured for Miss Langley to sit, his gaze fixed on her with the intensity of a hawk. You have something to share, mademoiselle? A truth, perhaps, that could not be spoken before? Miss Langley clasped her hands, her knuckles whitening. I wasn't entirely honest earlier, Monsieur Poirot, about Jenkins. He told me something a week ago in the library. It was late and I was reading. He was dusting the shelves and he seemed troubled. He said the codex was dangerous, that it held secrets that could ruin lives. He mentioned a name, Travers. He said Mr. Travers had been asking too many questions about the manuscript,
questions that made him uneasy. Poirot leaned forward, his mustache twitching. Monsieur Travers, you say? And did Jenkins elaborate? What did he fear? He wouldn't say more, Miss Langley replied, her eyes dropping to the floor. He seemed frightened, as if he regretted speaking at all. I thought it was nothing, just a servant's gossip. But now, with Jenkins dead... Her voice broke, and she pressed a hand to her lips. Poirot's expression softened, but his eyes remained sharp. Merci, mademoiselle, for your candor. This is most valuable. But tell me, why did you not share this earlier? Miss Langley hesitated, her gaze
Him. Poirot raised a finger, his smile enigmatic. No, Hastings, it points too neatly. The true killer wishes us to suspect Travers, to chase the obvious. But Miss Langley's revelation, it opens a new path. We must now uncover the secrets of the others, for where there is one lie, there are many. Poirot called for the guests to reconvene in the morning room, their faces a gallery of unease. Sir Reginald, his scholarly air eroded by grief, sat heavily in a chair. Eleanor Pennington's eyes were red-rimmed, her handkerchief now a sodden rag. Dr. Blackwood paced, his nervous energy undimmed, while Mrs. Blackwood's sharp gaze darted between Poirot and Travers. Travers himself looked pale, his spectacles glinting as he clutched his notebook. Miss Langley, now silent, avoided meeting anyone's eyes. Mesdames et messieurs, Poirot began, his voice commanding attention. The death of Jenkins is no random act. It is tied to the Codex Aureus, to its secrets, and to the knowledge one of you possesses. I ask you now to be truthful, for lies will only delay the inevitable. Who among you has a secret tied to this house, to Jenkins, or to the manuscript? A heavy silence followed, broken by Mrs. Blackwood's sharp voice. This is absurd, Monsieur Poirot. You accuse us all, yet you have no proof. If anyone has a secret, it's Travers, with his endless notes and his sneaking about. Travers bristled, his voice rising. I've done nothing wrong. My interest in the Codex is professional, as I've said. But if we're speaking of secrets, perhaps we should ask Miss Pennington about her late-night visits to the library. Eleanor gasped, her face flushing. How dare you? I go to the library to read, to escape the tension in this house. It's no crime. Poirot's eyes gleamed as he interjected. Mademoiselle, these visits, did you ever speak with Jenkins during them? Eleanor hesitated, her hands twisting the handkerchief. Sometimes. He was kind, always working late. We talked about books, nothing more. But once, he mentioned a letter, something he'd found in the library. He said it was private, meant for Sir Reginald, but he seemed worried. Poirot's head tilted. A letter, you say? And where is this letter now? I don't know, Eleanor.
Secrets? Dr. Blackwood stopped pacing, his hands clasped tightly. Never. I asked to study the manuscript, as Sir Reginald told you, but I was refused. Jenkins was just a servant to me, efficient but unremarkable. Mrs. Blackwood snorted. Unremarkable? He was always lurking, listening. I wouldn't be surprised if he was spying for someone, perhaps even Travers. Travers shot to his feet, his voice trembling with indignation. This is slander. I demand you retract that, Mrs. Blackwood. Poirot raised a hand, silencing the room. Enough. The accusations, they fly like arrows, but they miss the mark. The truth lies not in what you say, but in what you conceal. I will examine this letter, if it exists, and the Codex further. For now, return to your rooms, but know this. Hercule Poirot sees all, and the truth cannot hide forever. As the guests dispersed, their footsteps echoing in the silent corridors, Hastings leaned closer to Poirot. That letter Eleanor mentioned. It could be the key, couldn't it? And Travers is looking guiltier by the minute. Poirot's smile was grim. Travers is a convenient target, Hastings, but the truth is more complex. The letter, the cipher, the secrets, they point to a motive deeper than greed or curiosity. We must search Jenkins' quarters, for if he hid a letter, it may yet be there. The clock struck 1, its chimes a somber reminder of the night's grim toll. Poirot, his mind a whirl of logic and suspicion, led the way to the servants' quarters, determined to uncover the lies that festered in Whitehaven Manor's heart. Chapter 8. The Emotional Turning Point. The corridors of Whitehaven Manor, dimly lit by flickering sconces, seemed to close in around Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings as they made their way to Jenkins' quarters. The air was thick with the scent of old wood and wax, but beneath it lingered the intangible weight of secrets. The murder of the butler, the cryptic Codex Aureus, and the mysterious letter mentioned by Miss Eleanor Pennington had woven a tapestry of intrigue that Poirot was determined to unravel. Hastings, his mind racing with the revelations of the evening, followed closely, his soldier's instincts heightened by the manor's oppressive silence. Jenkins' quarters, tucked away in the servants' wing, were modest but meticulously household expenses, a few personal letters from years past, none of which mentioned the Codex. But as Poirot lifted the blotter on the desk, he paused, his fingers brushing against a faint irregularity in the wood. With a gentle press, a small compartment sprang open, revealing a single folded sheet of paper. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured, unfolding it with gloved hands. The paper was worn, its edges frayed, and it bore a short message in a neat, unfamiliar hand. "The Codex holds the truth of the Pennington shame. Guard it, or all is lost." Below the words was a single symbol, a glyph matching those in the Codex Aureus and the note found in Jenkins' hand. Hastings, peering over Poirot's shoulder, felt a chill. The Pennington shame? What could that mean, Poirot? And why would Jenkins hide this? Poirot's eyes gleamed. "This, mon ami, is the heart of the matter. Jenkins knew something dangerous enough to cost him his life. The Codex is not merely a scholarly treasure. It conceals a secret tied to this family, a secret someone wished to keep buried." Before they could discuss further, a soft sob echoed from the corridor. Poirot and Hastings exchanged a glance, and the detective motioned for silence as they stepped out. There, in the shadowed hallway, stood Miss Eleanor Pennington, her face streaked with tears, her hands clutching the folds of her dress. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice breaking, "I can't bear it any longer. I must tell you the truth." Poirot's expression softened, but his eyes remained sharp. "Mademoiselle, come, sit. The truth, it is a burden best shared. Speak, and Hercule Poirot will listen." They returned to the morning room, where the fire had been rekindled, casting a warm glow over the floral wallpaper. Eleanor sat, her hands trembling as she began. "It's about Uncle Reginald, and the Codex. I didn't tell you everything earlier because I was afraid for him, for the family. The Codex isn't just a manuscript. It's tied to a scandal, something from our past. Jenkins knew about it. He found a letter, not the one he mentioned to me, but another years ago. It hinted at a secret about my grandfather, Sir Reginald's father. Something shameful, something that could ruin our head." "I don't know. Jenkins wouldn't say who, but he was afraid, Monsieur Poirot. He said the Codex was cursed, that it brought nothing but trouble." Poirot's fingers brushed his mustache, his mind clearly at work. "Cursed, you say? A poetic notion, but the truth is more prosaic. Jenkins died because he knew too much, or because someone believed he did. This letter you speak of, the one he found years ago, where is it now?" "I don't know," Eleanor admitted, her voice barely audible. "He said he hid it, to protect Uncle Reginald. I begged him to destroy it, but he refused. He said it was his duty to preserve the truth." Poirot nodded, tucking the newly found letter into his pocket. "Merci, mademoiselle. Your courage in speaking has brought us closer to the truth. Return to your room and say nothing of this to the others." As Eleanor left, her footsteps fading into the silence, Hastings turned to Poirot. "This changes everything, doesn't it? A family scandal, a hidden letter. Jenkins was killed to keep it quiet." Poirot's smile was grim. "Perhaps, Hastings, but we must not leap too quickly. The letter we found confirms a secret, but it does not name the killer. And Eleanor's confession, while heartfelt, may itself be a performance. The human heart is complex, mon ami, and grief can mask guile." Hastings frowned. "You think she's lying?" "Not lying, perhaps, but withholding. She knows more than she says, or she fears more than she admits. We must now consider the others. Dr. Blackwood, with his historical interest in the Codex, did he seek to uncover this shame? Mrs. Blackwood,
so quick to accuse, does she hide a motive of her own? And Miss Langley, who spoke of Travers' curiosity, why did she wait to reveal it? Poirot rose, his cane tapping as he paced the room. The codex is the key, Hastings, but not in the way we first thought. It is not its value that drives this crime, but its secrets. The Pennington shame, whatever it may be, is a wound that festers, and someone in this house will stop at nothing to keep it hidden. Hastings glanced at the Manor's plans, still spread on the table. What now, Poirot? Do we confront Travers about the letter, or search for this older one Eleanor mentioned? Poirot's eyes gleamed. We search, mon ami, but discreetly. The killer is of the mystery deepen. The Codex Aureus, with its cryptic symbols and hidden truths, was no longer just a manuscript. It was a Pandora's box, and its opening had unleashed a chain of events that only Poirot could hope to unravel. Chapter 9. The Trap. The first light of dawn crept through the heavy curtains of Whitehaven Manor, casting a pale glow over the morning room where Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings had spent the night piecing together the threads of the mystery. The discovery of the hidden letter in Jenkins' quarters, with its cryptic warning about the Pennington shame, had deepened the enigma surrounding the Codex Aureus. Eleanor Pennington's emotional confession had revealed a family secret tied to the manuscript, but Poirot's keen mind suspected that the truth was still obscured by layers of deception. As the clock struck 6, its chimes soft but insistent, Poirot resolved to set a trap, a psychological gambit to unsettle the killer and force their hand. Hastings, bleary-eyed from the long night, watched as Poirot paced the room, his small frame radiating purpose. "Poirot," he said, rubbing his temples, "you found the letter, heard Eleanor's story. Surely we're close to naming the killer. Travers is still the obvious suspect, with his notes and his sketch of the cipher. Why not confront him directly?" Poirot's moustache twitched, his eyes gleaming with a mixture of amusement and determination. "Mon ami, the obvious is the enemy of truth. Monsieur Travers is a convenient scapegoat, his guilt dangled before us like bait. But the killer is subtler, their motives woven into the fabric of this house's secrets. To catch them, we must apply pressure that will make them falter." He paused, his fingers brushing the folded letter in his pocket. "The Codex Aureus is the heart of this crime, Hastings, but not for its scholarly value. It conceals a truth that someone fears, a truth Jenkins discovered, perhaps by accident. Tonight, we shall gather the guests, and I shall reveal just enough to stir the waters. The killer will react, and in that reaction, we shall see their shadow." Poirot's plan was to convene the guests in the library at 8 o'clock that evening, under the pretext of sharing new findings about the Codex. He instructed Sir Reginald to ensure its glass case like a silent sentinel. The guests assembled in a semicircle, their chairs arranged before the pedestal, the candelabra casting flickering shadows across their faces. Sir Reginald stood near the door, his scholarly demeanour eroded by grief and anxiety. Eleanor sat with her hands clasped, her gaze fixed on the floor. Dr. Blackwood and his wife sat close together, their expressions guarded, while Travers adjusted his spectacles nervously. Miss Langley, as always, was a study in composure, her eyes meeting Poirot's with a quiet intensity. Poirot stood before the Codex, his small figure commanding the room. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice smooth and deliberate. "The death of Jenkins is a tragedy, but it is not without purpose. The Codex Aureus, this ancient manuscript, is the key to his murder. Last night, I discovered evidence that Jenkins knew a secret tied to this house, to the Pennington family, and to the cipher within these pages." A murmur rippled through the group, and Eleanor's hands tightened in her lap. Poirot continued, his eyes scanning each face. "Jenkins found a letter, hidden in his quarters, that speaks of a Pennington shame, a scandal from the past, encoded in the Codex. This letter, combined with the note in his hand, suggests that he was killed to silence what he knew. But the killer made a mistake. They left traces, a smudge on the Codex, a scratch on the hearth, a chair out of place. And tonight, I am close to naming them."
Mrs. Blackwood's voice cut through the silence, sharp and accusing. "It's Travers, isn't it? His notes, his sketch of the cipher. He's been scheming from the start." Travers leapt to his feet, his face flushed. "This is outrageous. I've done nothing but study the codex as a professional courtesy. If anyone's hiding something, it's you, Mrs. Blackwood, with your endless accusations." Poirot raised a hand, his voice calm but commanding. "Silence, s'il vous plaît. The truth is not served by chaos. Monsieur Travers, your notes are indeed curious, but they are not proof of murder. The killer is among us, and they are nervous. They know I am close, and they will act to protect their secret." He paused, his gaze lingering on each guest, letting
While Miss Langley remained still, her expression unreadable. Poirot handed the sealed envelope to Sir Reginald, who locked it in a small safe behind the library's shelves. "This envelope," Poirot said, "is a challenge to the killer. Touch the codex, and you will be caught. Ignore it, and you risk the truth coming to light. Choose wisely." As the guests dispersed, their footsteps heavy with unease, Hastings leaned closer to Poirot. "Is there really a transcription in that envelope, Poirot, or is this all a bluff?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "A little of both, mon ami. The envelope contains a clue, but its true purpose is to provoke. The killer is clever, but they are human, and humans falter under pressure. Tonight they will act, perhaps to steal the codex, perhaps to destroy it, and when they do, Hercule Poirot will be waiting." Hastings glanced at the codex, its glass case glinting in the candlelight. "But how will you know if someone tampers with it? We can't watch the library all night." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Oh, but we can, Hastings. I have arranged with Sir Reginald for a small modification, a thread, invisible in the dark, stretched across the case. If it is broken, we will know, and I shall spend the night nearby, in the shadows, observing." The clock struck 9, its chimes echoing through the silent library. The guests retired to their rooms, but the manor seemed alive with tension, its creaking floors and whispering draughts a chorus of suspicion. Poirot settled into a high-backed chair in a darkened corner of the library, his cane across his lap, his eyes fixed on the codex. Hastings, stationed in the adjacent corridor, felt his heart race. The trap was set, and the killer, cornered by Poirot's relentless logic, would surely make their move. As the night deepened, the manor held its breath, and Poirot's little grey cells worked tirelessly, ready to pounce on the smallest misstep. The truth, he knew, was close, so close he could almost touch it. The library of Whitehaven Manor was a cavern of shadows as the night wore on, the candelabra reduced to flickering stubs that cast eerie patterns across the bookshelves. Hercule Poirot sat motionless in his darkened corner, their footsteps muffled on the library's thick carpet, and approached the codex's case. A gloved hand reached out, pausing as it brushed the invisible thread Poirot had placed. The thread snapped, a silent signal, and Poirot rose, his cane tapping once, sharply against the floor. "Arrêtez!" he commanded, his voice cutting through the darkness like a blade. The figure froze, their hand inches from the case, and turned slowly to face him. The dim light revealed Miss Beatrice Langley, her face pale but composed, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and defiance. "Mademoiselle Langley," Poirot said, stepping into the light, "you have chosen a most inopportune moment to visit the codex. Perhaps you will explain why you are here, in the dead of night, tampering with evidence." Miss Langley's lips parted, but no sound came at first. She straightened, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Monsieur Poirot, I meant no harm. I only wanted to see the codex, to understand its secrets. Jenkins' death, it's haunted me. I thought I could find answers." Poirot's moustache twitched, his gaze unrelenting. "Answers, mademoiselle? Or were you seeking to destroy what Jenkins died to protect? The thread is broken, the trap sprung. Speak the truth,
for Hercule Poirot sees through deception. Before Miss Langley could respond, a second sound came from the corridor, a muffled gasp. Hastings burst into the room, his face flushed. "Poirot, I heard something. Someone else is in the passage." Poirot's eyes flicked to the door, then back to Miss Langley. "Stay where you are, mademoiselle. Hastings, secure the passage. We have caught one fish, but another may yet swim into our net." Hastings darted back into the corridor, his lantern casting wild shadows as he followed the sound. Moments later, he returned, escorting a trembling Eleanor Pennington, her nightdress dishevelled, her face streaked with tears. "I found her hiding behind the panel," Hastings said, his voice tight. "She was watching." Poirot's expression was unreadable as he motioned for Eleanor to sit. "Mademoiselle Pennington, this is a night for revelations. Why are you in the servants' passage, spying on—"
Mix of exhaustion and dread as they assembled once more. Sir Reginald, Dr. Blackwood, Mrs. Blackwood, and Mr. Travers joined Eleanor and Miss Langley, their eyes darting between Poirot and the Codex. The air was thick with anticipation, the weight of the night's events pressing down on them all. Poirot stood before the Codex, his small frame commanding the room. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and deliberate. "The murder of Jenkins was no random act. It was a crime of precision, driven by a secret encoded in the Codex Aureus. Let us reconstruct the events, step by step, using the little grey cells to uncover the truth." He paced slowly, his cane tapping rhythmically. Jenkins, a loyal servant, discovered a letter hidden in his quarters, a letter warning of a Pennington shame tied to the Codex. This shame, as Mademoiselle Pennington revealed, concerns a scandal from the past, a theft or betrayal by Sir Reginald's father. Jenkins, curious or dutiful, began to investigate the Codex's cipher, perhaps suspecting its connection to this secret. But someone else knew, someone who feared exposure. Poirot turned to Travers, whose face paled. "Monsieur Travers, your notes and sketch of the cipher made you an obvious suspect. Too obvious, perhaps. You were curious, yes, but your curiosity was scholarly, not murderous. You are not the killer." Travers exhaled, his relief palpable, but Poirot's gaze moved to Dr. Blackwood. "Doctor, your interest in the Codex as a historian was genuine, but your disappointment at being denied access suggests a deeper motive. Did you seek the scandal for your own gain?" "No, I think not. Your nerves betray anxiety, not guilt." Mrs. Blackwood bristled, but Poirot continued, undeterred. "Madam Blackwood, your accusations were loud, but they served to deflect attention. You know more than you say, but your role is secondary, a witness perhaps to another's actions." He turned to Eleanor, whose tears had ceased, her face now a mask of dread. "Mademoiselle Pennington, your confession was heartfelt but incomplete. You feared for your family's name, yes, but you did not strike the blow." Finally, Poirot's eyes settled on Miss Langley. "Mademoiselle Langley, you came to warn him or to lure him to his death. You killed Jenkins because he discovered your secret." The room gasped, and Miss Langley's composure cracked, her eyes filling with tears. "He was going to tell Sir Reginald," she whispered. "The Codex, it holds proof that my father was ruined by Sir Reginald's father, cheated out of his fortune. I came here as a governess to find it, to expose the Penningtons. Jenkins found out. He recognized me from years ago, when I was a child. He was going to ruin everything." Poirot nodded, his voice softening. "And so you struck him down, using the servants' passage to move unseen, but you could not hide from Hercule Poirot." As Miss Langley collapsed into sobs, Sir Reginald stepped forward, his face ashen. "Is it true, Beatrice? My father, he did this." Poirot placed a hand on his shoulder. "The truth, Sir Reginald, is yours to face, but justice will be done." The library fell silent, the Codex gleaming in its case, its secrets no longer deadly. Poirot's trap had worked, and the killer, unmasked, could hide no more. Chapter 11. The Reflection. The library of Whitehaven Manor, once a sanctuary of scholarship, now stood as a solemn witness to the unmasking of a killer.
The revelation of Miss Beatrice Langley's guilt had left the guests in a state of stunned silence, their faces illuminated by the flickering candelabra, each reflecting a mix of shock, relief, and lingering unease. Hercule Poirot, his small figure commanding the room, stood before the Codex Aureus, its glass case glinting like a silent sentinel. Captain Hastings, at his side, felt the weight of the moment, the culmination of Poirot's meticulous logic and unerring insight. The mystery of Jenkins' murder had been solved, but the air still hummed with the echoes of the Pennington shame. Miss Langley, her composure shattered, sat with her head bowed, her hands clasped tightly as tears stained her lap. The other guests, Sir Reginald Pennington, Miss Eleanor Pennington, Dr. Mortimer Blackwood, Mrs. Clara Blackwood, and Mr. Julian Travers, remained seated, their eyes fixed on Poirot, awaiting his final words. The clock on the mantel, its hands creeping toward 3 in the morning, ticked softly, a reminder that the night's drama had reached its denouement. Poirot's voice when he said,
Mademoiselle, you killed Jenkins to protect your secret, but you could not hide from the truth. The smudge on the codex, the scratch on the hearth, the misaligned chair, these were your footprints, left in haste. The letter in Jenkins' hand, copied from the codex, was your attempt to warn or deceive him. But why, mademoiselle, did you not seek justice through the law? Miss Langley's voice was barely audible, choked with emotion. The law would not listen to a governess, Monsieur Poirot. My father was ruined, his name slandered by Sir Reginald's father. The codex held proof, a cipher detailing his theft of my family's fortune. Jenkins recognized me, knew my past. He was going to tell Sir Reginald, and I panicked. I didn't mean to kill him, only to stop him. Sir Reginald, his face ashen, rose unsteadily. Beatrice, is this true? My father, he did this to your family. Miss Langley nodded, her eyes meeting his with a mix of defiance and sorrow. The codex names him Sir Reginald. It's why I came here, why I took the governess position. I wanted the truth, not revenge. But Jenkins' death, it was a mistake. Poirot's expression softened, but his voice remained firm. A mistake, mademoiselle, but a fatal one. The little grey cells of Hercule Poirot have pieced together the puzzle, but the cost is great. The truth, it is a double-edged sword. It frees, but it wounds. He turned to the group, his gaze encompassing them all. This crime was born of secrets, of shame buried in the past. The Codex Aureus is no mere manuscript. It is a testament to human frailty. Sir Reginald, your father's actions cast a long shadow, but you are not your father. The truth, now revealed, is yours to face. Eleanor, her face streaked with tears, spoke softly. Uncle, what will we do? The scandal, it could ruin us. Sir Reginald's shoulders sagged, but he nodded. We will face it, Eleanor. The truth, however painful, must be acknowledged. I will make amends if I can for what my father did. Poirot inclined his head, a gesture of respect. C'est bien, Sir Reginald. The path to redemption begins with honesty. Is closed, and I shall take my leave. Hastings, watching his friend, felt a familiar admiration. Poirot's brilliance was not merely in solving the crime, but in understanding the motives that drove it. You've done it again, Poirot, he said quietly as they stepped into the corridor. But it's a sad business, isn't it? All this pain over a secret from years ago. Poirot nodded, his eyes distant. Oui, mon ami, the past is a chain that binds us, but the truth can set us free if we have the courage to face it. Come, Hastings, let us prepare to depart. The manor has no more secrets to yield. As they walked through the silent corridors, the first rays of morning light filtered through the windows, casting a golden glow over the ancient stones. The Codex Aureus, now a symbol of both shame and redemption, remained in its case, its cipher no longer a threat, but a challenge for future minds. Poirot, his cane tapping softly, seemed at peace, his little grey cells resting after their triumph. Outside, the Berkshire dawn was crisp and clear, the frost sparkling on the lawns. Poirot paused at the manor's threshold, glancing back at the looming facade. The world, Hastings, is full of mysteries, but none so complex as the human soul. We have solved this one, but others await. With a final bow to the manor, he stepped into the waiting car, leaving Whitehaven to grapple with its truths. Hastings followed, his heart heavy but proud, knowing that wherever secrets festered, Hercule Poirot would be there to bring them to light. Chapter 12. The Echoes of Truth. The dawn light that bathed Whitehaven Manor in a golden sheen did little to dispel the chill that lingered in its halls. The unmasking of Miss Beatrice Langley as Jenkins' killer had left the guests in a state of uneasy quiet, their voices hushed as they grappled with the revelations of the night. Hercule Poirot, his task of solving the murder complete, had announced his intention to depart, but a final thread of the mystery tugged at his meticulous mind. The Codex Aureus, with its cryptic cipher and the Pennington shame it concealed, demanded one last examination, not for justice, but for understanding. Captain Hastings, ever loyal, followed Poirot back to the library, sensing that his friend's work was not—
After the sleepless night, nodded. You mean to decode the cipher, Poirot? To uncover this Pennington shame once and for all? Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile playing on his lips. Précisément, mon ami. The cipher is a puzzle, and Hercule Poirot does not leave puzzles unsolved. But first, we must speak with Sir Reginald. The truth, it belongs to him as much as to Miss Langley's family. They found Sir Reginald in his study, a small room cluttered with books and papers, its windows overlooking the frost-kissed gardens. The scholar sat at his desk, his silver hair dishevelled, his face etched with the weight of the night's revelations. He rose as Poirot and Hastings entered, his hands trembling slightly. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, his voice hoarse, "you have done what you promised, brought the truth to light. But at what cost? My family's name, my father's legacy, it is all tainted now." Poirot's gaze was steady, his tone gentle but firm. "Sir Reginald, the truth is a bitter medicine, but it heals. The Codex Aureus holds the proof of your father's actions, a theft, a betrayal that ruined another family. Miss Langley sought to expose this, but her path led to murder. Now you have a choice, to hide the truth, as your father did, or to face it and make amends." Sir Reginald's shoulders sagged, but he nodded. "You're right, Monsieur Poirot. I cannot undo my father's wrongs, but I can acknowledge them. The Codex, what should we do with it?" Poirot gestured toward the library. "Permit me to examine it once more with your assistance. The cipher must be decoded, not for scandal, but for clarity. Its secrets belong to history, not to silence." They returned to the library, where Sir Reginald unlocked the glass case with a key he wore around his neck. Poirot donned his white gloves, his movements precise as he turned the brittle pages of the Codex. The symbols, dots, dashes and glyphs were as enigmatic as ever, but Poirot's eyes gleam, his mind tracing patterns invisible to others. "The cipher," he said, "is a substitution code, but layered with complexity. It uses Latin phrases as anchors, with the symbols representing shifts in
my youth, that he acquired artifacts through deceit. If the Codex proves this, I want it known, not to shame my family, but to honor those he wronged." Poirot nodded, his fingers tracing the symbols. "Bon, let us work together, Sir Reginald. The cipher will yield its secrets, but it will take time. For now, I have one final task, to ensure Miss Langley's confession is complete." They summoned Miss Langley, who was being watched by the manor's gamekeeper in a locked parlor, pending the arrival of the local authorities. She entered the library, her face pale but composed, her eyes meeting Poirot's with a quiet resolve. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, "I have nothing more to hide. You know why I did it." Poirot's gaze was piercing. "Mademoiselle, you killed Jenkins to protect your secret, but there is one detail you have not shared. The letter in Jenkins' quarters, it was not written by him, was it? You placed it there to mislead us." Miss Langley's composure wavered, her hands clenching. Yes, I wrote it, copied the symbols from the codex to make it seem as if Jenkins knew more than he did. I wanted to protect my plan, to expose the Penningtons without being caught. Poirot nodded, his voice softening. And yet, you could not escape the truth. Your father's ruin drove you to this, but murder is a heavy price. The codex will be studied, its secrets shared. Your family's honor will be restored, but not through blood. Miss Langley's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. I'm ready to face the consequences, Monsieur Poirot. Thank you for understanding. As she was led away, Poirot turned to Sir Reginald. The codex will be your legacy now, Sir Reginald. Decode it, share its truth, and let the past rest. The scholar nodded, his eyes fixed on the manuscript. I will, Monsieur Poirot. For Jenkins, for Beatrice, for my family. Poirot stepped back, his cane tapping softly. My work here is done, Hastings. The truth is free, and order is restored. Let us take our leave. As they walked through the manor's grand hall, the morning light streaming through the windows, Hastings glanced at his friend. You've done it again, Poirot. But it's a heavy victory, isn't it? So much pain, so many secrets. Poirot's expression
ahead stretched into the mist, promising new challenges, and he knew they would face them together. Chapter 13. The Weight of Legacy. The morning sun climbed higher over Whitehaven Manor, its rays piercing the mist that clung to the Berkshire hills, yet the warmth did little to thaw the chill that lingered within the manor's walls. The unmasking of Miss Beatrice Langley as Jenkins's killer and the revelation of the Pennington family's buried shame had left the household in a state of quiet reckoning. Hercule Poirot, his task of solving the murder complete, lingered in the library, his meticulous mind unwilling to fully release the threads of the Codex Aureus mystery. Captain Hastings, ever his steadfast companion, stood by the window, watching the grounds come alive with the soft bustle of morning, his thoughts heavy with the case's bittersweet resolution. Poirot, his small frame silhouetted against the towering bookshelves, stood before the codex, its glass case now unlocked at Sir Reginald's behest. The manuscript, with its cryptic symbols and faded Latin phrases, seemed to pulse with a life of its own, a relic of secrets that had claimed one life and threatened to unravel others. Hastings, Poirot said, his voice soft but resonant. The case is closed, the killer apprehended, yet the codex remains a challenge. Its cipher, it is a door to the past, and I, Hercule Poirot, cannot resist a locked door. Hastings turned, his brow furrowed. You mean to stay and decode it, Poirot, but surely the police will take over now, and Sir Reginald will handle the manuscript. What more is there to do? Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile betraying his restless intellect. Mon ami, the police will deal with Miss Langley, and Sir Reginald will face his family's legacy. But the codex, its truth is not merely for justice, but for history. To leave it unsolved would be to leave a puzzle incomplete, and that, Hastings, is an affront to order and method. He gestured to the manuscript, his gloved hands hovering over its pages. The cipher, it is complex, but not impenetrable. The symbols repeat in patterns, anchored by Latin words, veritas, culpa, furtum, truth, guilt, theft. These are the keys to the Pennington shame, and I suspect they point to a specific near the smudge they had found earlier, a series of glyphs interspersed with the word furtum. Here, he said, the cipher speaks of theft. The symbols, they are a substitution code, but layered with a numerical shift based on the Latin anchors. I have begun to decipher a fragment, and it speaks of a transaction, a collection of artifacts, acquired through deceit, that bankrupted another. Sir Reginald's face paled. My father. He was known for his ruthlessness in acquiring rare manuscripts. There were whispers, even in my childhood, of a rival collector, a man named Langley, Beatrice's father, who lost everything. Could this be what the codex documents? Poirot nodded, his eyes narrowing. It is likely, Sir Reginald. The codex was not merely a prize, but a record, a confession, perhaps, of your father's actions. Jenkins, in his duties,
stumbled upon this truth, and Miss Langley, driven by her family's ruin, sought to expose it. Her mistake was in believing murder could right the wrong. Hastings, listening intently, felt a pang of sympathy for Sir Reginald. "It's a heavy burden, Poirot, to learn your father caused such harm, and now to face it publicly." Poirot's gaze softened. "Oui, Hastings, but the truth, it is a cleansing fire. Sir Reginald, you have the chance to do what your father did not, to make amends, to restore honor. The Codex, once decoded, should be shared with scholars, its story told. Let the world know the truth, and let the Langley family's name be cleared." Sir Reginald nodded, his eyes fixed on the manuscript. "I will, Monsieur Poirot. I'll contact the British Museum, ensure the Codex is studied properly, and I'll reach out to any remaining Langleys, offer what reparations I can. It's the least I can do." Poirot's smile was approving. "C'est bien. The past cannot be undone, but the future can be shaped. And now, I must take my leave. The cipher, it will yield to others with time, but Hercule Poirot's work here is done." As they prepared to depart, Eleanor Pennington appeared at the library door, her face pale but composed. "Monsieur Poirot," she said softly, "I wanted to thank you. You've saved our family from further ruin, even if it means facing our shame. I misjudged."
Roles in the drama reduced to that of witnesses. Hastings glanced at Poirot, who adjusted his hat with meticulous care. "You've done it again, Poirot," he said, a note of admiration in his voice. "But it's a somber victory, isn't it? So much loss, all for a secret buried in a book." Poirot's eyes were distant, his voice soft. "Oui, mon ami. The Codex Aureus was a spark that ignited old wounds. But in solving this mystery, we have not only found a killer, but restored a measure of justice. That is the work of Hercule Poirot, to bring order where chaos reigns." They stepped into the waiting car, the manor's towers fading into the mist as they drove away. The Codex remained behind, its secrets poised to be unlocked, a testament to the power of truth. Hastings settled back, his mind already turning to the next adventure, knowing that wherever there were puzzles, Poirot would be there to solve them. Chapter 14. The Final Threads. The Berkshire countryside stretched out before Whitehaven Manor, its rolling hills cloaked in a morning mist that softened the edges of the world. Inside the manor, the air was still heavy with the aftermath of Miss Beatrice Langley's confession and the revelation of the Pennington family's buried shame. Hercule Poirot, his task of unmasking Jenkins' killer complete, had prepared to depart, yet a lingering sense of duty kept him tethered to the Codex Aureus. The manuscript, with its cryptic cipher, held secrets that extended beyond the crime, and Poirot's meticulous nature demanded that no thread be left untied. Captain Hastings, ever at his side, followed him back to the library, sensing that his friend's final reflections were yet to come. The library, bathed in the pale light of late morning, seemed to exhale a sigh of relief, its shelves no longer oppressive but serene, as if the truth had cleansed the room of its shadows. The Codex Aureus rested in its glass case, its pages a silent testament to the pain and betrayal they had concealed. Poirot stood before it, his small hands clasped behind his back, his green eyes tracing the familiar symbols with a quiet intensity. "Hastings," he said, his voice measured. "The case is solved, the killer apprehended, yet the Codex remains a puzzle. Its cipher, it is a voice from the past, and Hercule Poirot cannot leave it silent." Extent of his father's actions. They were joined by Sir Reginald, who entered with a weary but determined air. His silver hair was neatly combed, but his eyes bore the weight of sleepless nights and newfound truths. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, his voice steady, "I've wired the British Museum. They're sending a team of cryptographers to study the Codex. But I'd be grateful if you could offer one final insight before you go. The cipher, what does it truly say?" Poirot inclined his head, gesturing to the manuscript. "With your permission, Sir Reginald, I shall make one last examination. The cipher, it is a layered code, but I have begun to unravel its structure. Let us see what it reveals." Sir Reginald unlocked the case, and Poirot, donning his white gloves, turned the brittle pages with care. His magnifying glass hovered over a sequence of symbols anchored by the Latin word culpa, guilt. "Here," he said, his voice low. "The cipher details a transaction. The symbols, they shift based on a numerical key tied to the Latin anchors. I have deciphered a fragment. It speaks of a collection acquired through deceit, naming a specific artifact, a manuscript stolen from Edward Langley in 1873, sold to fund the Pennington estate." Sir Reginald's face paled, his hands gripping the edge of the table. "Edward Langley, Beatrice's father. My father always spoke of his collection with pride, but never of its cost. To think he built our legacy on another's ruin." Poirot's gaze was gentle but unflinching. "The past is a heavy burden, Sir Reginald, but you are not your father. The Codex, once fully decoded, will name others wronged, perhaps other families, other artifacts. You have the chance to make restitution, to restore honor where it was taken." Hastings, watching the exchange, felt a surge of admiration for Poirot's ability to balance truth with compassion. "It's a noble thing, Sir Reginald," he said, "to face this and make it right. Not many would have the courage." Sir Reginald nodded, his eyes fixed on the Codex. "I'll ensure the truth is known, Monsieur Poirot. The museum will publish the findings, and I'll seek out any descendants of those my father wronged. It's the least I can do for Beatrice, for Jenkins, for my own conscience." Poirot closed the Codex gently, his task
Truth. Help your uncle, and let the Codex be a bridge to healing, not division. Eleanor nodded, a faint smile breaking through. "I will. Thank you, Monsieur Poirot, for everything." As they stepped into the grand hall, the manor seemed to breathe easier, its secrets no longer a curse, but a path to redemption. The other guests, Dr. Blackwood, Mrs. Blackwood, and Travers, had gathered their belongings, their roles in the drama reduced to that of bystanders. Mrs. Blackwood's sharp tongue was silent, her eyes softened by the weight of the truth. Dr. Blackwood offered a nod of respect to Poirot, while Travers, his notebook tucked away, seemed relieved to fade into the background. Outside, the car waited, its engine humming softly in the crisp morning air. Poirot adjusted his coat, his movements precise as always, and paused to glance back at the manor. "Hastings," he said, his voice reflective. "This case, it reminds us that truth is both a weapon and a balm. The Codex Aureus was a spark that ignited pain, but also a mirror that showed the way forward." Hastings smiled, climbing into the car. "You've a way of turning chaos into order, Poirot. But it's a heavy business, isn't it? All this pain, tied to a single book." Poirot's eyes twinkled as he settled beside him. "Oui, mon ami, but that is the work of Hercule Poirot, to untangle the knots of the human heart, to bring clarity where there is confusion. The Codex will speak, and the world will listen, and we move on to the next adventure." As the car pulled away, Whitehaven Manor receded into the mist, its towers a silhouette against the rising sun. The Codex Aureus, now in the hands of those who would honor its truth, stood as a testament to Poirot's genius, a puzzle solved, a legacy redeemed, and a mystery laid to rest. Chapter 15. The Departure. The Berkshire Hills, cloaked in the soft haze of late morning, stretched out before Whitehaven Manor as Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings prepared to take their leave. The manor, its ancient stones bathed in sunlight, stood as a silent witness to the unraveling of a murder and the exposure of a long-buried shame. The Codex Aureus, now destined for the careful hands of scholars, held no more deadly secrets. Its codex will be sent to the British Museum tomorrow, and I'll ensure its secrets are shared, not hidden. I cannot thank you enough." Poirot inclined his head, his moustache twitching with a faint smile. "Sir Reginald, the truth is its own reward, though it is often a heavy one. You have chosen to bear it with honor, and that is enough for Hercule Poirot. The Codex Aureus, it will speak for those who were silenced, and your father's wrongs will be righted." Miss Eleanor Pennington stepped forward, her face pale but composed, her eyes clear despite the strain of the past days. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings," she said softly, "you've saved us from a darkness we didn't fully understand. I'll help Uncle Reginald,
and we'll make sure Beatrice's family is remembered, not just for her crime, but for their loss." Poirot's gaze softened, his voice gentle. "Mademoiselle, your courage is a light in this house. Hold fast to it, and let the Codex be a bridge to healing, not a chain to the past." The other guests, Dr. Mortimer Blackwood, Mrs. Clara Blackwood, and Mr. Julian Travers, stood at a distance, their roles in the drama now peripheral. Dr. Blackwood offered a nod of respect, his nervous energy subdued, while Mrs. Blackwood, her sharp tongue silenced, managed a tight smile. Travers, his notebook tucked away, seemed eager to leave the manor's shadows behind, his earlier protests forgotten in the face of the truth. As Poirot and Hastings stepped onto the gravel drive, the manor's staff lined up to bid them farewell, their faces a mix of gratitude and relief. The police had taken Miss Beatrice Langley earlier that morning, her confession ensuring justice would follow its course. The Codex, secured in its case, awaited the cryptographers who would unravel its final secrets, a task Poirot had left to others, confident in his own contribution. The car, its engine purring softly, stood ready, and Poirot paused at the door, casting one last glance at Whitehaven Manor. "Hastings," he said, his voice reflective. "This case, it was a tapestry of human frailty, greed, vengeance, shame and redemption. The Codex Aureus was the thread that bound them, but it was the little grey cells that wove the truth." Hastings smiled, settling into the car beside his friend. "You've a way of making the impossible seem simple."
Wherever secrets lurked, Poirot would be there to unravel them.
"What now, Poirot?" he asked, a note of anticipation in his voice. "Back to London? Or is there another mystery waiting?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. "London for now, Hastings. The world is full of puzzles, and the little grey cells, they are always ready. But first, a cup of tisane, and perhaps a moment to reflect on the symmetry of justice." As the car wound through the Berkshire Hills, the Codex Aureus and Whitehaven Manor faded into memory, their secrets no longer a burden, but a legacy of truth. Poirot, his cane resting across his lap, seemed at peace, his mind already turning to the next challenge, the next knot to untangle. For in the world of Hercule Poirot, no mystery was too deep, no truth too elusive, and the pursuit of order was a calling that never ended.